Morning's post cabinet briefing. It is good to be with you as usual. Welcome to all of you joining us on channel 22, our Facebook page, and of course those of you in the diaspora. We're happy to have you as always. We have with us today the Honorable Delma Thomas, Minister for Social Development, Housing and Community Empowerment, and the Acting Permanent Secretary in the Ministry, Mrs. Chrissy Wormer Charles. And we're talking today about the Spotlight Initiative. They will give us an update on that. Man Box, the criteria for the Chinese low-income houses, as well as seed recertification. So without any further ado, I will hand you over to the Honorable Delma Thomas.
A pleasant good morning to you. A pleasant good morning to you, and a pleasant good morning to members of the media, the general public of Grenada, Carriacou, and PD Martinique. It is indeed a pleasure to be here to update the nation on what is happening as it relates to the Ministry of Social Development, Housing and Community Empowerment. Today we'll update on where we are as it relates to the Spotlight Initiative, Man Box, the first phase, which will be a pilot project, and the criteria for the Chinese low-income housing and seed recertification. I want to start with the Spotlight Initiative and where we are. Just to inform that Cabinet has approved our legal consultant for Pillar 1 of the Spotlight Initiative, and Cabinet has also approved Ms. McQueen as the person to coordinate the entire project. However, we need the finalization from the UN and the UN Women. The legal and policy framework, which is Pillar 1, and our legal consultant will be Mr. Maitland. That is the person who will be providing us with the guidance, while Grenada has a strong legislative and policy framework regarding gender-based violence. Gaps remains, especially in relation to the comprehensive treatment of family violence. Critical success factors for building a strategy to remedy some of the gaps will be capacity development of parliamentarians as key influencers and decision makers around these issues, conceptualization of family court, and legal and policy formulation to address some key discriminatory elements in law. Vulnerable women, adolescents, and children often face multiple forms of oppression in the home and wider community. An inevitable lack of knowledge means that self-efficacy to claim their existing rights. For less, to advocate and lobby to address legislative, policy, and programmatic gaps. So our legal advisor will be assisting and advising the Ministry of Legal Affairs and policymakers as a whole in making changes that will deal with all the issues that affect women and girls across our tri-island state of Grenada, Carriacou, and PD Martinique. So I would like to outline some of the role of that legal person, the outcomes. Strengthening institutions. So building institutional capacity to address gender-based violence in the family and remains a priority to the government. And so that will be a key aspect of what will be done in terms of developing that particular pillar from our legal consultant. So our aim at the Spotlight Initiative is to empower women and girls so that they can deal with those issues that confront them. COVID-19 has showed us that many of our women were affected during the lockdown period, and even now we had a lot of reports of violence in the home of girls and violence against women, and therefore we are hoping that we can provide that avenue, strengthen some of the legislative agenda of the government as it relates to women and girls. We will continue as a ministry in developing and providing the necessary programs through that special initiative, which is a 3-year program to deal with those issues that confront our women and girls. So basically, that is what we want to raise as it relates to the Spotlight Initiative, though there are other pillars and we are working to finalize other issues as it relates to the Spotlight Initiative. I don't know if PS wants to speak to any aspect here before we move to the other agenda issue or item.
Thank you very much, Minister. And yes, I would like to expand a little bit more on some of the activities on the Spotlight programming. Right, so our Minister would have elaborated on the legislative and policy framework agenda. And we're also looking at a second pillar, that is strengthening our institutions. As we are aware, fighting the cause for ending violence against women, is a multi-sectoral approach. It's not just only one track. And as such, we have to ensure that the institutions that deal with persons who are victims of violence, their capacities more or less will be built. So building institutional capacity now would address gender-based violence in the family and remains a priority to this government. Outcome 2, which is strengthening institutions, proposes to support existing efforts towards institutional strengthening, as well as expanding them to address more pronouncedly gender-based violence in the family, specifically focusing on intimate partner violence and child sexual abuse. Already, we would have developed and drafted 2 TORs and letters of agreement would have been done in relation to the pillar. Training institutional strengthening coordinator and policy development TORs were already developed, and we're looking at revising our action plan for GPAP and policy and training institutional strengthening in relation to all of the issues and challenges faced by our women. And we look at outcome number 3 as well. And outcome number 3 is a multidimensional intervention area critical to reducing gender equality. This activity is still excuse me. It is still being meted out, and we are looking really in the coming months to see how this one can roll out. And so far, Pillar 4, which is the delivery of quality essential services, outcome 4, get towards strengthening implementation of the essential service package to ensure that services of all sectors are coordinated and governed to respond in a comprehensive way. Because what we recognize too, that we have a lot of persons doing different activities in different pockets. So it's very important that we coordinate all of those activities, so in the end, the victims and the survivors would benefit greatly. Right, so important emphasis in this pillar now would be placed on increasing the availability of and access to quality coordinated multi-sectoral services for timely, and that is something that one of our gaps that we experienced, efficient, effective, and non-discriminatory response for women and girls. Now, the Spotlight Initiative will be strengthening a range of services. So these services will be felt really from our persons who would be direct victims of violence. So in essence, when they transact or when they communicate with these services, it should be better. So already the letter of agreements have been signed, and we have been engaging in discussions with key stakeholders, and district reviews and so on are completed. So that pillar is well on its way. All right, so soon you would see some material benefits being rolled out into the different communities. And also to Pillar 5, which is data availability and capacity, which is very important. Now, the collection and dissemination, storage and uptake of data on violence against women and girls is a critical area for growth. So we have recognized that, data capture and ensuring that our practices are evidence-based are some of our gaps. And so with this now, it should be able to address all of this and put all of the data together so that it can inform our practice better, right? And so far the TOR have been completed, and we have the World Health and the women health, life, and experience data too as a backdrop that we can use as a tool to really to guide some of our intervention. So this is where we are in a nutshell with Spotlight. It's up and running. We are working within the constrained period of COVID-19, but in the end, we are trying to see how we can end violence against women and girls and to make our policies and even our services better suited to address the needs of our populace. Thank you.
So the other item, Man Box, which is a passport to manhood, and it's really a pilot program. And the goal of Man Box, Passport to Manhood pilot project, is to foster holistic development by teaching our young men important life skills for problem solving and decision making. This project is fully funded by the European Union, so it is a project of 8,000 EC dollars. Monbox project will target young men between the ages of 15 to 19, as they are more likely to experience the impact from their actions. Based on statistics from the magistrate court throughout the trial and state, social workers within the ministry have determined that individuals from 3 communities, Willis, Moncton, and Montreach, had a higher representation of being accused, and as a result of the program is proposed to implement it in these 3 communities. The ministry's case workers have identified prevalent social issues within the identified communities. Additionally, a community assessment to appraise the needs, assets, or resources were undertaken in May 2019 within the neighboring communities of Willis and New Hampshire, St. George. The following are some of the reported social issues emanating from the assessment: lack of poor parenting skills, unemployment, consumption of drugs and alcohol by both male and females, incest, disrespectful attitudes depicted mainly by males, and we also had truancy. It is important to note that as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and ensuring the public health safety protocol, implementation of the project was temporarily delayed. This provided us with an opportunity to revise the scope of the project to include emerging social issues of suicide or suicide ideation and other aggressive behaviors that are prevalent among young men, which negatively impact the sustainable development of our country. Manbox, Passport to Manhood, is scheduled to commence on September 10th, 2020, and will be conducted over a period of 10 weeks, with participants receiving certificates of participation upon completion. Each cycle will target 15 young male participants per identified communities. The pilot project will be conducted by in-house facilitators. Sessions will be conducted each Monday concurrently as follows: venue, Willis, Moncton, and Montreach centers, 45 minutes to 1 hour, time 5 o'clock to 6:30. All sessions will be done with strict adherence to the COVID-19 protocol as follows: wearing of masks at all times, use of hand sanitizer on entry, social distancing, and all other protocol that is established as it relates to the COVID-19 pandemic. The project aims to provide the following benefits to the identified communities: to reduce the amount of young men entering the court, to provide community members with essential skills to navigate conflict situations, to facilitate community members' capacity to reframe negative response into more positive, meaningful ones, thereby reducing crimes among our people and to build community resilience. P.S. I don't know if you want to make any more intervention as it relates to that particular initiative.
Just very briefly, because I think you would have done a very thorough job. Nonetheless, often it is said that our focus is primarily on women, all right? But this man box would prove to be different in the sense that it would be exposing our young men, to different life skills, strategies to assist them as they encounter any difficult moments in our lives, and especially transacting in this period, right? So we've also noticed that over the pandemic, we would have had 3 suicides for males, right? And this is part of our ministry's response to address situations such as these. So I think it's very important for us not just only to focus on our women and girls, but also very important for us to focus on our males. So I think this project would cover some of it, right, as we roll out it into the community. So we're asking persons to cooperate fully as we engage with our young men to ensure that they end strong and that no one is left behind. Thank you.
All right. P.S. Maybe we could just look quickly at, just reiterate for us how many people would benefit from this particular program, the Man Box program. The minister did say it was those between 15 and 19.
15 and 19, right? But we have to bear in mind that this is a pilot project too as well. So we're focusing on between 10 to 15 in the first instance. We see how it goes, and then we try to see how we can expand as we go along, right? So roughly 10 to 15 persons per community. Okay?
Thank you. So, Minister, you can continue now the criteria for Chinese low-income houses.
Thank you. The criteria. So we have provided the information that we are nearing completion of the Chinese low-income housing in 5 different sites. We are hoping before the end of the year that we are going to be completed in 3 sites, which is Dumfries in Carriacou, the Villa in St. Patrick, and Diamond in St. Mark. And in the first quarter of 2021, we'll see Boucherville, St. George, and Corinth in St. David. And therefore, the application process is ongoing. We have a number. I must say that we have seen thousands of applications. I mean, there are so many entries in applying for those low-income houses. There are criteria to meet. The houses are really gifts from the People's Republic of China, and I want to make that clear, that government did not take a loan for those low-income houses as you would make to believe by some people in social media and otherwise. These houses were given to us as a gift, and therefore this is the second phase of the Chinese housing, which is 654 housing units across the 5 different sites. And we have criteria as it relates to applying. So persons who already have a house cannot apply for additional house. So if you have a house before, you cannot apply and say, well, I want a unit for my child, or I want a unit for while I'm in St. George's to use. So you have to be persons who never own a house before. That's the first criteria. Low-income owners. So if you're owning a particular low income, then you'll be given priority for those housing. Also, public officers. So while we say low income owners, there are public officers that will be able to apply and get these houses, and we're looking at our nurses, our teachers, our police officers, and other public officers within the public service. There's a percentage. So the majority will be for very low income owners. However, other persons within the public service can apply and get a unit of the Chinese housing. But there's consideration be given to persons in the constituency or the parish. So priority will be given to them. So let's say, for example, if 10 persons applied, 5 people from, let's say, for example, St. David, and 5 from outside of the parish, and they have similar, the needs are similar, the persons who are from the parish of St. David will get first priority. So that is a key aspect. Persons with disabilities. There's also a percentage that will be held back by the ministry, and it's something that we have done in the other sites for issue of violence, domestic violence and other forms of emergency housing needs. So sometimes there's a fire, you will rebuild, but you do not have a place to live at the moment. And therefore, we will have free units that you can use for a period. So it would not exceed 6 months. Those units that will be kept by the ministry and be loaned, as it were, to persons needing an emergency shelter will be for not for more than a period of 6 months while we reassess the situation, because there might be a situation, for example, an abusive case, where yes, you have them in that unit for 6 months, but then you realize that they need government assistance as it relates to housing, and therefore they will get assistance. And I want to speak to the issue of abuse. We have seen a number of reported cases during the pandemic. A number of issues arise because of the lockdown, people living, there are a lot of times people realize that they can't live with this man or this woman, and they only saw that during that period when you locked down and you had to be there for a long period of time. But we are urging, whether it's male or female, if there are issues of abuse in your home, we urge you to report to the police, because we have the experience from where we sit. While there are many cases of abuse that need our urgent attention, and government will do all that it takes, because in fact, very soon we will be speaking of other programs that will address women and girls as it relates to domestic and other forms of abuse. But while we know for a fact that there are many families experiencing abuse, we also are aware that there are people who will, maybe the relationship not working one way or the other, and you want to move out, you will come to the ministry directly and say that you experiencing abuse, and that sometimes our officers, so overzealous to assist because we know of the issue. Sometimes we go ahead even without police intervention or no form of intervention, and decide we want to assist, and then realizing that the people were not honest on their reporting, that they wanted another place because the same partner sometimes be there with them, or sometimes you want to move on. Sometimes the relationship not working. There's no form of abuse, but you use that because you realize that there are programs and we are sensitive to the needs of abuse. And I want to urge people, and as I've said to my peers and the department, that people must go through all the phases. You report to the police first. If there are abuse, then let the police be your first point of contact. Our special victims unit, I can praise Miss Andrea Cadet and her team, because I know they are professionals and they are very sensitive to those needs, and once you call them, they will deal with those issues. So the first point should be the police. And then the police can report to us, and after all investigation and we are sure, we can move you out from there temporarily. And a lot of times, so you will call and you will say, for example, that I am experiencing abuse, so our first response will be to remove you from your present dwelling place and bring you to a place where we can protect you. But a lot of times, families who may be trying to trick the system, as it were, would say, I do not want to go to that place. I do not want to go to thing. Then we have to investigate deeper, because we have had the experience where people come. In fact, I've always given that experience that I have personally as the minister. Someone came to me with directly, young minister, someone came to you directly, you sensitive, I even cry with them. And I rush out to get all the money in my secretary's purse to assist, realizing that this person really, you could say, tricked me. And the ministry, we have seen many cases like that. And therefore, we will ensure that proper investigation must be done. So yes, our first response will be to remove you from the situation of abuse, but we want to make sure that all investigation done first before we decide that we'll give you some way, or we'll provide you with additional assistance. And that is because of past experiences we have as a ministry. So although I spent some time on that because I thought it was important, we are already talking about the criteria as it relates to the Chinese low-income houses. So we speak to the issue of violence cases, people who are disabled, and people with intimate partner violence and all that. They will be given priorities for the Chinese low-income houses. So as I said, applications are out already. We are ensuring that some of the problems that we saw in the first phase, we are working closely with the Ministry of Infrastructure because we know that in the first phase we had some structural problems. We are working to ensure that these problems are no longer there. There are also some other teething problems with the first phase in terms of people occupying and who is responsible for repairs as it relates to inside as compared to who's responsible for repairs as it relates to outside. Remember, these are really low-income houses, and whatever we're asking for insurance and otherwise is really small as compared to the cost, and therefore we will expect that the homeowners will have some responsibilities that will be signed when they receive those units. And I want to stress, sometimes in recent times, you hear there's particular programs by the ministry and by the government, you will see people saying that all will be given to the people who support in the NNP. As Minister of Social Development, it doesn't matter who the PS is or was, or my management team. I always say to them one thing for sure, that we are a ministry to assist persons within our trial state despite of political affiliation. I've never changed my message. And I believe as a government, we have never changed our message. And we'll be naive to believe that there are not people who support us who of that mindset. The truth is, there are many persons who are supporting us that will say that we should get first. But we are leaders and we are chosen to represent people. So our housing program will be for persons who need the most. I have seen, statements as it relates to the house repair program where people say, well, the only persons who are getting assistance are those who voted NNP. And the truth is, I would not deny that maybe in some areas the possibility exists that maybe supporters are getting and others may be getting less, because I'm not able to look at every application from across the trial state and say, well, this one. But what I show as a ministry, we have been formed with our officers in the field that you are to go out. You do not have to sit down in your comfort zones, but you have to go out within your different communities to ensure and look for persons in need of housing. Many times, 10 and 11, I will be texting my permanent secretary on issues of families brought to my attention needing assistance. Those assistance by the ministry should never be for who voted for the NNP. It should be families who are in need of assistance, and therefore we should be our brother's keepers. And that is why I say the public should also be involved in terms of identifying, sometimes not going to the media alone, but calling to the permanent secretary. She isn't a political appointee. She is a public officer, and therefore she will ensure that once there are genuine need outside there, that we address them and address them urgently. I also want to speak as it relates to housing, that our bathroom and toilet program has started in June, and a number of families have already received assistance. So we also have a brigade, because we understand and appreciate that in the past we gave material, it stayed under families' home, some people sold it. Those are the facts. While you are a leader, There are people who will come, and the truth is, when you assess the situation, they need assistance. But sometimes you give them the assistance, and there are dishonest people outside there. In all programs, and it doesn't matter which government in office, there are persons who know how to trick the system. There are dishonest people outside there. And sometimes we have to call them out, whether they support the NNP or otherwise. If you are dishonest, you are dishonest. Because at the end of the day, the politician is the one that we call corrupt. The politicians are the one who get the blame. And that is why I'm also very vocal in my management meeting, saying to the public officer and saying to the PSCs that you have a responsibility to be on top of your game, to be on top of the work within the ministry. Because when something go wrong, and I look in social media, I'm not seeing anybody saying Permanent Secretary Charles or the SAO or somebody else is responsible. When the truth, and in fact, I'm the leader within the ministry, but when it comes to accounting, the Permanent Secretary is the accounting officer. And I always remind my Permanent Secretary that you are the accounting officer. If you do good, then good will follow me as the minister. If you do not provide proper oversight, then I'm the one getting blamed, not you. And therefore, we have to be able to provide proper oversight. We have to do what is right, because we believe at the end of the day, we are supporting people. And if we can make those changes to change the life of people within our trial and state, the life of Grenadian, not NNP, or not NDC, but Grenadian needing assistance, then our living will never be in vain. I thought it was important for me to stress those issues this morning because, you know, I'm constantly on social media, and sometimes as human being, sometimes you read certain things and you know it's not true, but just because it affects and it falls under your domain, because you cannot take out yourself. As a leader, you have to take responsibility. So sometimes you see and you hear things, and it affects you in a way. Whether or not people will say, well, it shouldn't affect you. But if it's not true, it shouldn't affect you. That is not true when it comes to human being. Because we are human beings, certain things affect us, and therefore we have to provide the guidance. We have to provide the correct information. And I want to thank members of the public, despite of your political affiliation, who have reached out to me on particular concerns that you have, and we work together to look at them to ensure that we assist families in need of government assistance. And it doesn't matter what assistance government is giving. We will look to ensure that people who need our assistance, and that is why it's important not also to our officers, but our school attendant officers, our teachers, and our church leaders, they too have a role to play in identifying issues. And I want to commend them also, because in the recent weeks I've met with a number of church leaders who came to me identifying issues of members within their congregation that need assistance. But I also want to say that government cannot do it alone. And therefore I urge, in this period especially, when our revenue base has fallen, that we need all hands on deck. So government has a responsibility, but members of the community and business community, and even the churches, we all have a responsibility to assist persons who need our assistance. And Piers, do you want to make any intervention before I go to CID certification?
I think you would have covered everything, and just to reiterate, in terms of housing, persons who are willing to apply, the forms are available at our ministry on also Housing Authority Grenada, which is located at the entrance of Lansapine. Thank you.
CID recertification. And I must first of all say that CID is support for education, empowerment, and development. The CID program was initiated to enhance the delivery of Grenada's safety net program through a series of key operational processes. It is an income support program that targets the poorest and most vulnerable citizens in Grenada and provide them with conditional cash transfer to facilitate improved development outcomes among households. However, while it is support for education, it is important to note that elderly citizens needing assistance are also part of the program. And Cabinet has already approved that this should be separated. But we have not yet separated that because we had to formulate some proxy means testing, because we do not want to do things arbitrarily in terms of just identifying persons to come on the program, where anybody could say, well, I want to put on Jack, I want to put on Jane on the program. So we have to ensure that as a ministry that we work on a proper proxy means testing, some proper criteria as it relates to getting onto the program. So recertification is part of our operations manual, whereby after 2 years of applying and being on the program, you have to be recertified. Keeping in mind that SEED, you're not supposed to be on SEED permanently. SEED is aimed at taking you out of poverty. So when you finish secondary school and you're not going to TAMCC, it means that we have to graduate you from the program. If you're going to TAMCC and continue to need government assistance, then you'll continue to get assistance. So this is a period of graduation right now where a number of students would have graduated from secondary school or TAMCC. These persons will be automatically be removed from the program. However, our Bible as it relates to SEED, which is our operations manual, speaks to the process of recertification. He says that after 1 year and 9 months, after beneficiary households enroll in the program, the SEED officer will send a letter to the beneficiary household addressed to the household representative indicating that the beneficiary household is up for recertification if they wish to continue participating in the SEED program. It is important to note that SEED is aimed at taking you out from poverty or from a state of dependent to independent. But many families, even after condition get better, will not voluntarily come forward before recertification to say that my condition has improved, I am now gainfully employed, there are 2 persons working in my household, please, I'm ready to graduate. Few families have done that. And therefore, it is important to note that there are the period of recertification. So right now we are in a recertification period. In fact, we were supposed to start the public relation aspect since in March, as it relates, and recertification was supposed to be started in April. However, we know what happened at the end of March, and the rest is history. Here we are now speaking to the issue of recertification. However, based on the whole issue of the COVID pandemic and all that, and our present resources, we are going to be doing it in a phase manner. So our recertification process will be phased. An action plan has already been developed by the SEED team within the Ministry of Social Development, Housing and Community Empowerment to effectively guide the process. So in the period leading up, we will have a number of educational and public relation aspects first before our officers go out to the field to do the recertification. And the recertification in different communities would not be done by the SEED officers who were there before. So our social workers within the ministry will accompany a whole team would be for each parish in terms of doing the recertification. At present, they will be giving out the letters informing members that first phase of recertification will be done, and those persons who are in the first phase are beneficiaries with observable improvement in living conditions. And you may ask what that means and how do you decide? There are persons within the different communities who, when they applied for SEED 2 years ago, had no income. they were unemployed. Some started as Imani trainees and then they end up being teachers. Some were Imanis in the police, now they are permanent police officers. Some were in other aspects and now they gain public, they got employed. And therefore, these will be the first group of persons, because when you applied, the application said unemployed. However, at this period, you are now employed. And as I said, it is a situation where we would expect people to say that I'm now employed, so you have to report that. And therefore, you will ask for recertification, but we are hardly seeing that. Then another group that we want to look at. So over the last 3 or more months, after the COVID-19 pandemic, we are doing the distribution at the level of the community. Our social workers and team from the Ministry of Finance and from the ministry now have first-hand information on families, whether the conditions have improved, and so they are seeing that by being out in the communities. However, we have 733 households receiving their grants in financial institutions. So with that in mind, we do not know whether or not these people's conditions have improved, because we've been out in the field for the last couple of months. We have not had any interactions with them because their grants go directly to their accounts. So these 733 persons will be part of the first phase of recertification. And there's also adults who are receiving, so it's called it adult poor. We have 154. These are people who, poverty-stricken people, who at a period of vulnerability was assessed and passed the proximity testing and are on the program. These people, some of them, as I said, also found employment. Some of them conditions better, maybe some of them conditions worsen. And therefore, it is important for us to provide that assessment to know where we are as a ministry. So that's the first phase of recertification, but every household must be recertified. So we're starting with them for this year, but the recertification process will continue for every household because it is part of our operations manual. It is part of how we identify and how we look to see how families are improving and how whether or not they need more support as it relates to government, in terms of, because we know COVID-19 has created a lot of challenges for families, and therefore it's important for us to look at that. But we also know that while there are many families whose conditions have improved, there are many families now who need our assistance. So while some persons will be graduating, some persons will be able to get assistance from government. And therefore, we are going to be doing the recertification. We will be first providing that whole education aspect, and we will have a whole series of public relations activities within the media and even with our beneficiaries to ensure that they understand that what recertification is all about. But we know that even from the start of the program, even before they were enrolled, that was discussed with them. And it is not a means of removing. And I also would take the opportunity to address issues when you see people say that I was removed from the program. The only persons that are removed from the program without recertification are those elderly citizens who died, or persons who are on the program who passed away, or persons who have graduated, meaning that they were receiving as TAMCC students or secondary school students, and they're no longer in school. No one Not me as the parliamentary representative, as the minister, or no MP in no constituency cannot come to the permanent secretary or send a list to the permanent secretary to get on seat or to remove somebody from seat. It doesn't happen that way. So a lot of times people are speaking without having the facts. People are saying things without any evidence, but it sounds good and people will run with it. And sometimes we get a few likes on social media, so we say things which are inaccurate. And maybe it's part of how people see politics, but I do not see politics of blatant lying and dishonesty. To me, you have to be honest, because honesty, as far as I'm concerned, is the best policy. And the truth is, I would not sit and speak to the nation here and say there are no gaps as it relates to the seed program, or there are no challenges, because we are dealing with human beings. We are dealing with persons who can give wrong information, because remember, the system only put out what you gave it, what you feed it out with. So if somebody came to the ministry and did a form and they did not give you the correct information, and that is one of the gaps that I've discussed, we have to ensure that somebody would not only just walk to the ministry and do a form and then be assessed and get on. But the ministry and the social worker must go out back to the field to ensure that what is given on the form is what is correct. And in every government program, you have things like that. Because as I said earlier, we have persons who are very dishonest. So for example, in the voucher assistance program, there are families that would come in, you unemployed, but your wife is working. You will say, well, make it look like your whole family is, everybody is unemployed in your home. You lied. And that is why it's important that proper oversight is provided. Because when people lie for us, or we get the blame, we are the ones that corrupt. And you know, it's something that I always, that affect me. And I get a chance, I'll speak about it. Because people are not always honest. And sometimes, we have even officers sometimes who are not honest in terms of putting information. And those are the gaps that must be corrected as we go forward. Those are the gaps that as management team within the ministry that we must correct. Because I'll be on the PS and the entire management team knows that I'm always on their back, because to me, I have to protect myself and protect what is outside there, what people believe, the perception, because they are not blaming them, they are blaming us as the politician. So therefore, as the minister, I am always on top of the backs to ensure that you do what is correct. But you would not see if you have 4 or 5 applications as the minister, you do not expect me to go through all the 5,000 applications and be able to identify people from all across Grenada to say, well, this person should be in and out. And you know, sometimes people's condition improve. So, for example, before our GLCI, our Grenada, GCLI? GLIC, yeah, the country index, yeah. At first, and that is the reason why we also have to look at a review, because remember, we started with this under the World Bank program. And when we started, persons who had bathroom and toilet inside their homes were deemed well off. But bathroom and toilet cannot be deemed as well off in this kind of century, in this period we're living in. Because to me, bathroom and toilet inside is really a way of improving the standard of living of our people. And we always have to aim to improve the standard of living of our people. And recently, as you know, that within the government program, we are now providing in-house bathroom and toilet for families. And therefore, you cannot say these families are ineligible because they now have a bathroom and toilet. And that is why we have to relook at how the program is and see where we can make changes. 2 years has passed and it's the right time. So recertification is the first phase. But after recertification, we will be looking at a total review of the program. But to say, as I said earlier, as it relates to other program, SEED is not an NNP program, and it's not a program for NNP supporters, but it's a program for vulnerable families needing government assistance. And the truth is, despite what you're reading in social media and otherwise, there are vulnerable families who know that they're getting the assistance. So even when they read that, they know that some people are being dishonest because they know that I'm not supporting this government, but they know also know that government have a responsibility. This is not a program for who you support or not. This is a program to assist vulnerable families, to help them to move from a state of dependent to independent. So as a ministry, we are committed to continue providing assistance to families that need our assistance, and we'll continue to working along with our truancy officers, our schools, our community leaders, and our officers within the ministry to ensure that families who need our assistance get the assistance despite of whatever affiliation they hold. P.S. I give you a chance to speak to.
Thank you very much, Minister. I just want to expand a little bit on the operational process and the reason for recertification. Now, recertification is very important, and it happens every 2 years. And the government would have taken over SEED since 2018. So, the time has come for us to do the recertification process. Now, this exercise is critical in the continued development of the SEED program. And Minister would have already expanded on the fact that, SEED is really about, helping persons transition from poverty to a state of independence, right? So this exercise now would be assisting us as we try to update and regularize the data on our system. It's going to help us to provide useful data in analyzing the impact of SEED program on the vulnerable community in Grenada, and that is something that we need to understand too as well. Once the beneficiaries and so forth receive their cash transfer, we need to know how impactful SEED has been on their lives so that we can, probably, give them the necessary interventions that they need, to get out of poverty. Because remember that the whole reason behind SEED is really to break the cycle of poverty. It also would produce a deeper insight into the characteristics of current beneficiary households, and we've seen observable changes in persons' lives. Some persons would have been doing better, and some persons would have been falling in deeper into poverty. So we are conscious of that. So this process will ensure that we get to see it from a first-hand perspective, and it will be able to help us to direct our intervention strategies as we work towards alleviating poverty within Grenada. It's also going to give us the opportunity to assess the program's operational processes in addressing the needs of the poor. What are our gaps? Is the program very effective? What do we need to do to make it more robust in terms of targeting the necessary persons to get the assistance needed to graduate them out of the program? Also, too, it will be providing us with the data for the implementation of a phased plan for households assessed as ineligible. Now, already it was explained that it's not a permanent space in terms of the SEED program. It is more or less persons who are in transitional poverty, or some persons who really are not able to work and be able to realize their quality of life in the best way possible. So it will give us an opportunity to examine that. It also will be creating the opportunity to enroll beneficiaries already assessed as eligible, because already we have a very long waiting list, right? And we have to target persons who who really need that type of assistance, and identifying and recording emerging trends and social ills affecting the vulnerable community. And this is a very important point. The face of poverty has certainly changed in Grenada, and so we need those information to direct our practice and to improve our intervention strategy. And already our action plan has been developed, and we are getting ready to move into the field. And one has to understand too as well that as we go out, we are following the COVID-19 protocol, so to protect our field officers as well as our beneficiary. I think that's it for now for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. And P.S. So, our colleagues, the floor is now open for questions. I think Callistra Faria, your hand was up quite a while now. Callistra, good morning. Are you there? You can go ahead with your questions.
Yes. Good morning. Thank you, Wesleyan. Good morning, Minister. I need to know the total amount of Grenadians currently receiving aid, as well as the number of new applications that have been received for 2020, if any have been received. And my second issue, my questions on the second issue, will social programs be rolled out from the beginning of settlement at the housing developments that are scheduled to open this year? Any social programs being designed to incorporate into the whole settlement procedure to mitigate against community breakdown? And can the minister say or the PS say whether or not there are any intervention programs planned to deal with the growing problems at the Mongay housing development, such as neighbor conflict, child abuse, sex crimes, a number of rapes and so on happening, and there's been like major community breakdown there. Is the ministry planning any specific intervention for that area?
So maybe I'll start with major breakdown at the Mongay site. Well, I do not have that information, so this is this is new information for me, that there are specific breakdown there that need intervention. But as you identify some of the ills there, the Mongay housing site should not be dealt with in isolation to how any other crimes are being dealt with. So if there are issues of rape, as you said, and sexual abuse among children or adults there, then it should be reported to the police, similarly as how it will be done at the next community, so that intervention can be dealt with. And I agree that when you are living in a places in apartment buildings like what we have in those different sites, that you need different intervention. And I know the ministry, the committee set up, including PS, they are looking at some means of social programs in terms of providing some educational aspect as it relates to families who will live at the new site. And as you know, said that they need intervention needed at Mongay. So we need to follow up, and I think the permanent secretary and our social workers will be able to, I mean, not just intervene, but I think we need to have some form of reporting. And I know that you live there, Ms. Ferreira, so maybe you can give the PS some of our social workers some of the issues so that they can deal directly, because they just can't go to there and say, well, someone reported that there are these issues and we are here to deal with them. So if we know specifically what are these issues, where they are located, who are involved, then we can deal. I know that we have dealt with issues there in the past. The police have dealt with issues there as well. So we would need to know specifics in order to go there to deal with whatever issues that confront. Because there will always be issues in communities, whether it's a housing scheme, whether it's communities where people live, there'll always be neighbor conflict and all that. But we have to find ways to resolve our conflicts, and sometimes we need intervention from the police or social workers, and therefore it is important that we have those information so we can assist in dealing with them. PS, do you want to speak to the amount of persons on the seed program and or new application?
Yes, thank you. So currently we have over 6,000 persons on the seed program, and we have received over 1,000, between 900 to 1,002 thereabouts, new applications. Okay.
Callistra, that's it for you? All right, so we move on to the next question. We have a question from social media, Minister. Somebody's asking, we've mentioned about violence against women and girls. What are you saying about violence against men, which they are saying may have reached higher heights with the advent of COVID?
So I have spoken of that before. You know, sometimes when we speak of the statistics we have and the reported cases. If men have issues of violence, then they too must report it. You see, there is this perception that as men you shouldn't cry, that as men you should be strong, that as men you should be all these things. These are not correct. If men have issues of violence, then they too must report those violence, and they too, the violence, those behaviors must be dealt with. You see, there are always violence in families. So sometimes you have male violence, you have female violence, but all levels of violence, because violence should not be accepted, it doesn't matter who. So whether or not a woman decide to hit a man, then that is unacceptable. And violence is not only hitting, it can be verbal, it can be physical, it can be emotional. No form of violence should be accepted, and all forms of violence should be reported. And we focus on female because our statistics shows that they are the ones who report.
I want to make a point. So I want to add to as well that we have seen some men reporting domestic violence. The numbers are not very large, of course, and we do encourage them to report it to as well, because violence affects everyone. It doesn't matter if you're male, if you're female. Once you experience IPV, you should report it, right? And we have trained officers ready and able to deal with persons who experience violence, men as well as women.
Good morning, Linda Straker. You have a question? Questions?
Yes, good morning to Minister and to everyone listening. I have quite a bit of questions, but I guess I will not be able to ask because of time. However, my first question has to do with the recertification of the SEED program. Is there a timeline when all these thousands of persons would be evaluated, and so that the ministry could say how much persons will continue and how much will graduate? So we know in September, will it be complete by the end of the month, the end of October? Can you give us an idea as to how long that process will take? And my other question has to do with the legal advisor for the Spotlight program. Can the minister tell us whether or not the maintenance law, is it something that will be reviewed by the legal advisor as part of that program because of what it provides for now? Would that be on a review legally?
So the men. Oh, sorry.
I'm not right. The other question I have, which is sort of really bothering me for months now, over the past years, and sometimes as much as 3 times a month, sometimes twice a week, we would see the police sending out missing persons report. About 80% of that is most likely young girls under the age of 15. Then we just get a release saying that the person has now returned home. Does the ministry aware as to why these young people would have left home in the first place, and what happens to them upon returning home? Are they just left alone? Is there a program? Is there something that will look after these young people when they return home? Are they removed from their home? Are they placed in homes? Because we have no other reporter than they left and then they returned. So can the ministry enlighten us as to what really is most likely the root cause of these young ladies leaving home, and what happened to them when they return home? Thank you for now.
Thank you. So PS will deal with the aspect of recertification, but as it relates to the maintenance, we already have that on the agenda for review, understanding that of some of the gaps and some of the issues as it relates to the present law as it relates to maintenance. So it is on our agenda. The whole issue of missing girls is a concerning issue that so yes, the police will report to you that they are missing, and then they will also report that they are found. But in terms of the ministry, we deal with those cases. So sometimes there are different issues why young ladies mostly will leave their homes. As teenagers, sometimes peer pressure, sometimes, a lot of times when you hear somebody leave their homes and you find them, in most of the cases, they are involved in some kind of intimate relationship with somebody else, and sometimes most of the time you find them is either by some boyfriend or so, and therefore we are dealing with those issues. So we counseling is provided for them, and once we find out, because sometimes we have to investigate, sometimes they are tight-lipped on where they were and who they are involved with, and sometimes they lie. So once we have the evidence, then arrests, we do have arrests. So once you find them in a particular home, whether or not they have been involved with any boy there or what, the household, the person in the house, the person in charge of the house will be arrested by the police, or should be arrested, because I'm not sure for every case, but I know in most of the case, the police are involved and people have been arrested for that, because that you cannot harbor a minor. That's the first part. And secondly, a whole medical have been done, and sometimes we realize that they are sexually active, and therefore the next responsibility is to find out with whom, and be able to deal with it. As you said, most times these young girls are underage. So anybody who have any sexual interference with a girl who is underage is rape, and therefore the perpetrator must be held accountable and be dealt with. But we will provide counseling and all the parenting in some instances. In some instances, we urge, because after discussion, you realize that there are a lot of social issues at home. We realize that they are young parents, are the mothers or the fathers. They have no fathers or no male figure in the household. So there are a number of social issues in some of the houses, and therefore, as a ministry, we deal with those issues without coming to the public and say, well, we found that person and we're doing A, B, C, or D, but we do it privately.
As a follow-up to that, you speak about social issues in the home, and earlier in your presentation, you mentioned about women tricking the system to get housing and so. If a woman is found, or a person is found to be tricking the system so they can get some of the social net benefits, is there a penalty for that?
Well, we have never involved the police, but we would call them in and you know, and identify and speak to them on what they're doing, and saying you're creating problems for others, because when someone actually come with a genuine case, then it means that we'll have to follow all procedure before we provide any assistance for them. So I'm not sure if within the law there I think we have never dealt with it from that aspect in terms of calling the police.
That's it, Linda?
Read the recertification.
The question about the length of time for the recertification.
Okay, great. Just one second.
All right, so read the recertification program. We have roughly over 4,000 persons to recertify. So you would imagine the time that it would take, and based on the COVID stipulations and protocols. So we're looking at possibly within the space of 9 months. That's just a guesstimation. So we will be rolling out shortly. So for the first quarter, well, I just say the first quarter, for the rest of the year, we'll be looking at close to 900. And in the coming months, you know, we would see how it goes. But we're looking at something roughly under 9 months.
GBN, good morning. Linda, if you have questions, we try to come back to you, although we're running out of time. But let's just give GBN a minute to ask a few questions. GBN, good morning.
Good morning to everybody. My first question is, Minister, could you tell us, as it relates to the review of the SID program, the information that would be given, would it be based on what person tell you? Because I know that you complained earlier about misinformation, or would it be on the ground work from social workers? Also, could you tell me how far your ministry is going as it relates to placing PALM students or students who had a pregnancy in returning back into the regular classroom? How far has your ministry gone as it relates to that? The Man Box Passport to Manhood Initiative, if I get this right. Could you tell me what exactly is the program doing for the young men in dealing with the social issues? I know you mentioned a bit about the program, but you didn't really outline what help exactly these young men are getting.
The whole issue of I want to start with reintegration. I recall speaking at the parliament some time ago. I did not say that our ministry, I've never said in that period that the ministry and the government is going to reintegrate. I said it is at the time, I believe it is a time for us to relook. So I've seen the discussion, and I've noted the discussion, and maybe I'm happy that I started the conversation, which must be held in terms of our young women and the stigma and the discrimination of being pregnant. But it wasn't a discussion. We had a discussion from the ministry standpoint, just looking broadly at children who are willing to. Not forcing and saying you're taking them from Palm and bring them there. That was never a discussion. I've never alluded to that in any of my discourse, that we are taking them from Palm and bringing them back in the secondary school. That will be irresponsible of me and of the government if we just decide on our own as a policy children should just go back to school like that. We said that the conversation must be started. The discussion must be started. And we have to look at, because there are children, in fact, it's happening even now. It's not publicized because it should not be an issue. If you publicize it, then it might be an issue in social media. But there are a number of children who got pregnant, and based on the school, the principal and the school staff with the support system provide an avenue for them to either finish if they're in Form 5 or have the child and come back. But it is not publicized, and that is good, and I am happy, and I commend those schools who took those initiatives. We had one last year. But what I was saying is that after I spoke at length at our sister who passed away, may the Lord make peace with her soul, and the achievement as a mother, as a adolescent mother, the achievement she had, I was saying it is a time for us to start that conversation of addressing the issue of young women who want to go back to school. So I'm not saying that all women is one brush, it's a brush that can go for everybody, that paint everybody. I'm saying that there are young girls who are willing, maybe 12, we have young girls who are 12 years and pregnant. That's a child, that's abuse. And we cannot just brush them away and say, well, we do not want them for religious purposes or otherwise. I respect the religious views, but I'm saying that when God came, he didn't come for the righteous. So we all make mistakes. We all falter at times, every one of us. In fact, from where I sit here, I'm the Minister of Social Development. I'm at the highest level. But I had my first son as a young teacher at the age of 18. It just says that all of us, and I was not married. So I would not sit here and blame and blame young girls. If a 12 or 13-year-old child gets pregnant in school, I believe that we have to provide the avenue. Yes, PAM is there and providing good service. Yes, we are providing support for mothers. We are providing stipend for them. We are also providing daycare for the children. But I'm saying that there are some children who might be willing to go back to school, and we should give them that chance. So it's not a decision, no decision was not taken by the cabinet. No decision was not taken by the ministry. In fact, we didn't table a submission for cabinet on returning to school. It's just a casual discussion from where we sit at the ministry in terms of discussion. We discussed that particular issue. I recall last year, PS and Ms. McQueen and I, we sat casually, and we were discussing that there's a possibility for that. And I also spoke to the Minister of Education and personnel within the Ministry of Education, understanding that a child has to be a child, and education is a right of every child, and therefore in whatever way. So I'm not saying at all that all children who are pregnant should enter back to the mainstream school. It might be more harm than good for them, because sometimes the stigma, the discrimination, people calling you mother and all these things would not be good for them. But I'm saying we at a period in our history, a period in our development when we must start the conversation, and the conversation has started, I believe, of children returning to the mainstream school.
Right. In relation to the man box, right, as discussed before, the objective really is to facilitate community members to reframe negative responses into positive and meaningful ones. In often cases, I know a lot of our interventions, our interpersonal interventions, where we work on developing persons' interpersonal skills. When we have sessions like that, we see a large turnout of females. It's normally female dominated. So a program like this is specifically geared towards our young men, right? In essence now, at the end of it, they should be able to have proper coping skills. All right, we recognize that some of them may not have proper coping skills. They may not be able to respond well to certain circumstances and situations. So the objective really is to pour into them, right? So that in the end, they should be able to respond well. So our focus is not just only on women, but rather on our young men and our male counterparts, right? And it's also to build community resilience. It's important for us to have strong communities. If we have weak community members, our communities will disintegrate. So it's part of our mission, right, to target everyone. No one should be left behind, including our young men and our older adults. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, colleagues, so we've gone over the 1 hour mark. Anybody has a quick question? Rena, you still have questions?
One question was not answered as it relates to the SID program. I wanted to know, I wanted the minister to tell me if the information that is given, would it be based on what persons tell them, or would they be on the ground social workers?
So our team will be on the ground, you're correct, out in the field. Because as we said earlier, we identified that there are gaps and there are challenges with the data collected, some of the data collected in the past, and therefore the social worker and the team, there will be a whole team per parish out in the field collecting the information. And they will also be verifying with schools because you have the registration. So for example, if I say I have 5 children, then it means that I have 5 children living in my household because we can verify. So yes, we'll be the first person we'll be speaking to for the recertification will be the beneficiary, but also we will be looking for additional information before concluding that recertification process.
Minister, I just want to add something, right? Now, there are categories of persons who receive seed, right? So the categories are children, right? Chronically ill, the adult poor, the disabled, and our senior citizen. So the first cohort and pregnant and lactating women. So the first cohort that we are looking at really falls between the persons who are receiving our seed benefit through the financial institution, right? And we are targeting also to our adult poor, right? So those are the categories that we are looking at. So it's a systematic process. It's not just pulling persons at random, but rather and truly we are looking at the category. The manual points to that, so we are sticking to it. Thank you.
I think it's important that I make a point as it relates to recertification, because from inception of this whole seed program, while Carriacou and PD Martinique is part of Grenada, they were not part of the inception of the seed program. So they had the old program from the past, and we started phasing in them with the seed program. So we have done a first phase of assessing through the proxy means testing the elderly citizens receiving the seed. So that's the first phase, and we will be doing the others separately. And therefore, with that recertification, Carriacou would not be part of the recertification because we are now integrating them into the whole seed program.
All right, colleagues, we have to wrap this up now. Anybody has a quick question?
Yes, I have a quick question to the minister.
All right, so we'll wrap up after you. Go
If
ahead.
a ministry or she is in a position to tell us for the period that covered COVID, the amount of restraining or protection order that was taken out by women who were facing abusive situation because of COVID?
I do not have a figure as it relates to that. I think the police will have that particular figure, special victim unit. I know that we have intervened on a number of cases. We had to find private dwelling and place for persons during that period, but I can't tell you overall the total.
Okay, colleagues, we will wrap things up here. The Honorable Minister and PS, I'll give you the opportunity to take a minute to say any final words that you have.
All right, so it has indeed been an honor today to just speak about some of the activities coming up from our ministry, right? As we roll out the recertification, as we try our best to assist our poor and vulnerable to gain access quality housing, as we also try to include our men in our intervention strategies, as well as promoting resilience within our community. It is always a pleasure to do so, and we are looking forward to the support of our communities, the support of our villagers as we do our recertification, right? It speaks, it really calls to a lot of us, working together as a team, not just only as a ministry, but really as a community of Grenadians. I also want to even congratulate some of our social workers and our ministry personnel. They have been really, really working hard during the COVID period, so it will be remiss of me not to make mention of it. And I would like to even look at even our desks for the elderly. They have been provided excellent services over the COVID period, right? They have been working tirelessly. Our social workers, our DV officers who can't really come on stream based on the job that we do, our seed officers, our probation officers, they are working very tirelessly, and I want to commend them. They have been working hard. It's a few of us. We have a big job to do, but we are up for the challenge, and we take our job very seriously. So I want to commend them and commend our minister too as well, as we look towards addressing some of our social needs in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. The thing about it is we may not have enough financial resources to stretch, but at the same time, if we work together cohesively, we definitely can see some change, some tractions, right? And it's a special appeals to our young men, right? We know that this time probably could be very challenging for you, but we want you to rise up, right? We want you to rise up and feel very free to come into our office. It's not specifically for women or girls, but it includes our young men. So let us continue to work together as a team, as a community, to build in good practices and building strong societies so that our children's children can benefit well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, PS, and thank you. I also want to thank PS for the role in the ministry and during challenges, who your workers are, who are committed workers are, and therefore I want to commend you for the hard work, for your dedication, and the entire staff, our psychosocial staff within the ministry, our counselors, who go beyond the call of duties, the desk for the elderly, our gender and family affairs division, our seed officers, and even our housing officers. I want to commend the drivers and everyone, even the cleaners, for the hard work. Our daycare personnel, Ms. Dawn Cyrus, must be commended for her hard work and dedication. Different times I believe in giving staff flowers while they're alive. So the last time I gave Miss Matthew Clarence, who is our excellent team leader as it relates to psychosocial. But today I want to salute Ms. Dawn Cyrus of that involved and responsible for daycare. Ms. Cyrus really take that job to heart. She take it as her baby, and she go beyond her call of duty to deal with issues as it relates to her division. Our seed manager, Ms. Buckmeyer, and for their hard work, their dedication. Ms. McQueen, when it comes to the issue of gender and family affairs, that's like her baby. She's committed, and therefore I want to thank them for the hard work and dedication. I want to thank you, the media, for being here this morning, and for also having to deal with my challenge. As you realize, I had an asthma attack this morning, so you realize I'm coughing back and forth because I'm dealing with an asthma attack, and I've been having it regularly in COVID-19, I guess because of the mask and having to cover my face, but I am coping well and doing what it takes. And urge other families, because asthma is an issue that affects many children and many adults across the trial state. And sometimes in recent times we've seen people dying because they do not take their medication. So I urge you, take your medication, always walk with your puff, and whatever medication the doctor give you, you take it. And in this period, you have to be even more careful and try to avoid crowded places, and because it's difficult sometimes with the asthma to always have the mask on, and therefore it's important that you stay away from the crowd, because I believe if there's any, while there's no reported case of COVID-19, we have to protect ourselves, because if there's any spread or any issue or virus, we can be affected because of our condition. So I want to urge family, take care of your children, take care of yourself. We are still in the pandemic, and though there's no reported case, let us protect ourselves. Let us do what it takes to protect our families, and to say that from the Ministry of Community Development, the Ministry of Social Development, Housing and Community Development, we are committed to dealing with the issues. We are committed to providing service for all on sundry. Every Grenadian man and woman who need services and assistance from our ministry, we are committed to providing those services. Thank you, and I look forward to continue working and continue serving to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. Yes, we realize you had some challenges, so I do hope that you feel better as the day progresses. But thank you so much for being here, nevertheless, and doing what you have to do. So we've been speaking, of course, with the Honorable Delma Thomas, Minister for Social Development, Housing and Community Empowerment. She facilitated the post-cabinet briefing today, along with Mrs. Chrissy Worm Charles, the Acting Permanent Secretary. So thank you to each and every one of you, media colleagues, and for those of you joining us on Channel 22, the Facebook page, and of course in the diaspora. Have a great day, everybody.
Stay up to date with all that's happening with the new National Party, NNP. Send us a message via text or WhatsApp on 405-8683 with your name, email, and...
Good morning to you. Now, we just came off the heels of a post-cabinet briefing with our Minister for Social Development, the Honorable Minister Delma Thomas, who gave us a wealth of information as it relates to some new initiatives that are being taken by this ministry. And in addition to that, the housing project, as we know, the Chinese gifted us, or the Chinese government gifted us these houses, as most people would want to believe or to say, or some people would want to say, that we take a loan for it or whatever. That is not so. It was a gift to us. And mind you, once these are completed, there are 1,000 more houses to be constructed. We heard of the criterias that would be used to gain access, or to be able to get one of these low-income houses. And we're looking at people with disabilities, public servants, nurses, doctors, teachers. You also fit the bill. You also fit the criteria. We have people who earn salaries in a lower bracket, right, or low income earners. They also have this opportunity to gain from these low income houses, to benefit from this initiative. All right. So a lot was discussed. Of course, we don't have much time to really give a synopsis of what would have happened, because, of course, the post-cabinet brief extended to much longer than was expected. All right. But a lot of information has been given. All right. Now, Mr. Bola in the background there. Mr. Bola, good morning. I wish he would come on. He said it's a little bit of time, so we don't have much to talk about this morning. But I do want to encourage, as the Permanent Secretary said as she closed the program this morning, and I think it was a very insightful way to close. She said it takes all of us every single individual, to make sure that these things work, to get ourselves out of these situations, whether it's poverty, whatever it may be. We really need to work together to ensure that these things are successful, And I want to appeal to people. Sometimes we sit there and we say, oh, this is not being done and that is not being done. And we have information that says otherwise, and we don't share it. I think it's time that we start sharing information that promotes positivity. I see a lot of information going out there sometimes that is negative and propaganda and memes. And sometimes these things, we share them for a laugh. But nonetheless, we're sharing them. So it's important sometimes for us to be mindful of the information that we are sharing and make sure that what we are doing is the right thing, that we are promoting positivity. All right. So we're going to take a short break and then we'll be back to close off the program. Of course, as we've been doing for a couple months, has it been months? Weeks now. We've been ending the program with the national report. So we're going to take a short break and then we'll be back with some more information for you.
To the droplets that are produced when someone coughs or sneezes, which makes COVID-19.
All right, guys, and we are back. Now, of course, most of you know that schools opened yesterday. Most of our children have gone back to the class, well, not to the classroom, to the school to have discussions on how they move forward. I know I can speak as a parent. My son was quite happy. He went into school. The teacher discussed with them the protocols, what they're expected to do, what is expected of them. And that's why we often ask parents, there must be a collaboration between you and the school. The discussion, we've spoken about it days and weeks here before the reopening of schools because we know it was imminent, it was going to happen. But what we do need to keep reiterating is that parents need to start discussing, and if you've discussed already, continue discussing with your children what is expected of them when they go out to school. Make sure that your kids have sufficient water. The lunch program, I know that the Ministry of Education has noted that is still operational. They're still giving hot lunches to the children in need. So that is still happening. But as much as you can as parents, try your best to ensure that you pack a hot lunch for your child as well, to kind of limit on the amount of contact that they have with the outside, and speak to them about what is expected. Wear their masks as much as is necessary. Use their hand sanitizers, wash their hands, keep their physical distance and all of that. These conversations are conversations not just for the Ministry of Health or not just for the Minister of Health, not just for health officials, but it's conversation that needs to happen between parents and teachers and students and teachers and parents and students. And it's a round robin, if you'd call it that, where everyone needs to get on board, There are people out there who don't agree that the children should go back to school. But how would we know if it doesn't work if we don't try it? All right? So it is important for us, yes, to make suggestions, for us to be involved, but ensure that the reason we're doing it is for positivity, is to really ensure that we can have a successful rollout of this back to school program, and not just because you want to condemn or not just because you want to say no, all right? But just make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. Because our children, they need the support. Can you imagine? Just think about it. Imagine if you as a parent, you've been through it in part from March to July. Just think about it. Having to stay home and homeschool your child for the remainder of the year. Well, Mr. Bola asking me what happened to August. August is holiday. August is that time of summer when the children don't really have to engage in instruction and engage in academics, on a large scale. But it's more pronounced when the semester begins, when it's that time when they're supposed to be in school, whether it's online or whether it's in the classroom. It's important that we begin school again, because imagine how much instruction the child has already lost as a result of not being in the classroom. So it takes time, it takes effort, it takes work, and I would appeal to those who are making the noises and don't have any children. You ain't a chick, you ain't a check, but you're making a set of noise. You don't understand the situation because you've never been placed in it, and you don't even understand what it is like to really provide instruction to a child. Then please, just sit on the back burner and allow the parents to do what they do best. Parent, and allow the teachers to do what they do best. Teach. And stop trying to tie up the process because you feel it's going to gain you some kind of political points, or it's going to make you more popular because you feel like you're opposing government, or it would because you're an activist you need to activate your mouth and speak. It doesn't work that way, It's just like you leave engineering to the engineers. I know social media over time has qualified a lot of us, or we think it has qualified a lot of us to speak on issues that we know nothing about. We've never experienced it. If we're placed in the physical position to do the work, we can't do nothing because we don't know what's going on. We just feel like when we say something, it sounds good, so we must speak about it. But please, leave the parenting to the parents and the teaching to the teachers, and stop trying to tie up the situation. Oh, yes, of course, Mr. Bola. And the administration affairs to the administrators, All they want to run country, all they want to be engineers, doctors, lawyers, and y'all not even certified in any of these things. Just pure confusion makers. So let's... They're not certified. You see, in the background talking to me, and I want him to be here next to me sitting so I could talk to him, but he's all the way in the back there. But guys, he is right. We are running out of time. So we want to appeal to you here, our Hard Talk family, to just let's work together. Let's try our best to build Grenada collectively, because government is a continuum. It goes and it comes and it goes and it comes, and it's a cycle. But if you are not doing anything for yourself, if you are not trying to build yourself as an individual, if you are not trying to pull yourself and your family out of poverty, if you don't set goals and aspirations for yourself, no matter what government comes into office, you will always remain in the position that you are in because you are not driven. So let us be a driven people this morning. Let us get up from our posteriors and try our best to figure out our next step, what we are going to do with our own lives, how we are going to build and improve ourselves, because nobody's going to be able to do it better. Guys, we have come to the end of our program for today, but of course, as we do every day, we say, whatever you do and whatever you say, be safe, be secure. We always want to be talking with you, and we don't ever want to be talking about you. So please, enjoy the remainder of your day. And of course, apologies for yesterday. We had some technical difficulties, some things that we couldn't really... It was above our heads, for lack of better words. It was above our heads. But we are back up today, and we will be back with you tomorrow. So do enjoy the remainder of your day. And stay tuned for the National Report.
Ministry of Education starts new school year with Hour of Prayer. We'll have details to this story and more in the National Report. With the details to the news for Monday, September 7th, 2020, I am Rikisha St. Louis. Monday, September 7th was the beginning of a new education setting for many students who have been schooled virtually since March when the country took precautionary measures against the global pandemic COVID-19. The first day back in the classroom was no ordinary one, as schools across the island were instructed to adopt a staggered approach in keeping with health and safety protocols. Recently, Minister for Education, Human Resource Development, Religious Affairs and Information, the Honorable Emmeline Pear, explained that the staggered approach means that not every student will be back in the classroom on the first day or on any given day. This week will be used for orientation and needs assessment from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. This will be followed by Parent-Teachers Conference from Monday 14th to Friday, September 18th to discuss the school's plan for classroom teaching and online learning until the Michaelmas term ends in December. The Ministry of Education held an hour of prayer on Monday to mark the start of the new school year. CEO Mrs. Angela Finley stressed the importance of prayer, especially during these turbulent times. She encouraged parents, students and educators to be safe during this period.
Despite how challenging the circumstances may be, Philippians 4:6 urges us to make our requests to God through prayers. Let us go boldly before the throne of grace. Let our prayers and supplications fill this place.
The hour of prayer was held under the theme, Trusting God, we will pursue our goals with determination. Every child can succeed.
We pray, O God, for those stakeholders involved in the education of our children, our policymakers, our principals, our teachers, other staff of the various educational institutions, parents, God, and students, especially in this time of turbulence, this time of crisis. We pray for your divine wisdom and blessing, O God, that, Father, you will give and endow us with the strength to be able to give the type of education that is needful to our children in this time. In Jesus' name.
That was President of the Alliance of Evangelical Churches, Pastor Devon Rashe. Continuing the news, Minister with responsibility for disaster management, Senator the Honorable Dr. Winston Garwe, says Grenada has significantly improved since the passage of Category 3 Hurricane Ivan 16 years ago on September 7, 2004. Ivan caused catastrophic damage to housing stock, with over 90% being destroyed and roughly 90% of agriculture. Senator Garwe says as the years go by, the nation has developed a better understanding of disaster management.
There has become now a better or a greater awareness to storms and the impacts of storms. When Hurricane Ivan came on the 7th of September 2004, it was about 50 years prior we had a hurricane, and that was Hurricane Janet in 1955. So many persons were not used to the impact on the devastation that hurricane could cause. So today we have seen heightened awareness by our people to respond or to deal with the threat of a hurricane. But more significantly, as a country, what we have been able to do is to create the environment for, one, in our climate negotiations and debt financing, to embed within those clauses a hurricane relief clause. Ivan would have caused that. So in the event of an impact, we are able to further negotiate with our creditors or our lenders to ensure that there is consideration for a cease in payment because of the impact of a hurricane.
Through the World Bank, Grenada has been able to develop a catastrophic disaster drawdown option, which is implemented to provide countries with immediate resources in the aftermath of a hurricane. According to Minister Garwe, with cooperation from the general public, disaster management can be effective.
This is an opportunity for the entire country to respond and to do well. I'm also going to call on the business community to give support, because if we have to move from this point where we're at, we need the continued support. There are some initiatives that we're presently working on within the agency, and you will hear from us. I'm talking to the business community at this point in time, and we want you to give your support, because our commitment to this country and the commitment to our people is to ensure that we create the environment for people to remain safe and people to protect their properties, protect their lives, but most importantly, to ensure that as a people, we look at one for the other.
Continuing the news, construction work on the Paradise Pre-Primary School is progressing despite weather-related delays. The GIS recently visited the construction site in St. Andrew to get an update on the progress of the work. Rashida Noel is a construction engineer intern with Hanover Construction Company. She says the building is designed to be used as a shelter in the event of a natural disaster.
So far, for now, we are on roof, and we're looking to complete roof and commence plastering by the middle of this month. The building is a pre-primary school. It also will be serving as a potential shelter in case of hurricanes. The reinforcement and the steel is designed for earthquakes, and the roof will be equipped with multiple hurricane straps designed for major hurricanes.
The projected completion date is December 2020. This is the National Report. The news will continue after the break.
Protect yourself and our community from COVID-19. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. If soap and water are not available, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer with at least 70% alcohol. Use a tissue when blowing your nose, sneezing, or coughing. Immediately discard the tissue properly and wash or sanitize your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Let's do our part to ensure that each and every Grenadian remains healthy. To stay up to date, visit the Government of Grenada's webpage or the Ministry of Health's Facebook page. For more information, contact the Ministry of Health's hotline by calling 53-VIRUS. This has been a public service announcement brought to you by the Ministry of Health.
Welcome back. 30 individuals, including 2 females, have been selected for a 2-week aircraft rescue and firefighting training session from the Grenada Airport Authority. An opening ceremony was held at the Maurice Bishop International Airport on Monday to mark the beginning of the training. Minister for Tourism and Civil Aviation Dr. Clarice Modeste Kerwin says over the years, the Airport Authority has been giving exceptional service to visitors and the people of Grenada, Carriacou and PT Martinique.
I believe you have been well selected. From what I have been informed by Mrs. Williams, it took quite a while. Some of you have been volunteering in the meantime, helping to keep us open, because we have to meet, fortunately for us, we have to meet with standards, high standards that are set by international organizations, such as ICAO and FAO and so on. We have to meet all of those standards. So in our little piece of rock that we love so much called Grenada, we are at that airport, we are competing on a playing field with the world, and therefore our performance must be of internationally accepted standards. So those of you who have been chosen, you join a team of persons who have been carrying the airport and carrying the good name of Grenada as a flag, our flagship for our country to perform its business and to play its role in the economy. of Grenada Carriacou and Pigeon Martinique. I trust in the judgment of the selectees, and I also trust in the competencies that will be displayed over the next few days of your training so that you will learn well and perform well.
Safety and security at the airport are among factors for the efficient functioning of the airport.
The airport authority is mandated by ICAO standard to have special amount of persons per shift on a daily basis. Hence the reason you were chosen to bridge that special gap. I must confess that you made a bold decision, one we believe is in the right direction by joining this noble institution. It's one of discipline and family-oriented. By saying so, teamwork. Reiterating, teamwork is important.
Officer in charge of the RGPF Fire Department, ASP Glenroy Corian. Finally, in the news, the Customs and Excise Division of the Ministry of Finance has received a GX 2012 gas analyzer, a tool used to test the air quality in confined or enclosed spaces with a 30-second response time. This vital piece of equipment, which detects and analyzes hazardous gases, is capable of giving instant, on-site and online results and contains a complete sampling system, taking measurements directly into the shipping container without the need to take a separate sample to a laboratory for analysis. The portable gas analyzer was donated by the United Kingdom Border Force. This law enforcement entity secures the UK borders by facilitating the legitimate movement of individuals and goods whilst preventing harmful elements from entering. British High Commissioner, the resident British High Commissioner, Mrs. Wendy Freeman, handed over the equipment on Monday to Deputy Comptroller Karen Forsyth.
This equipment is part of the ongoing support from the UK Border Force to Grenada Customs, and this particular equipment is really for the health and safety of staff. So it detects hazardous and toxic gases in containers, so staff who enter containers to do inspections can check whether it's safe to do so. So it really will help staff, their health and welfare, but also to speed up the clearance process as well, I believe so. So I'm glad that it's going to be put to good use. Glad to be of support to Grenada Customs and a part of the ongoing support from UK Border Force.
Acting Supervisor of Enforcement Ken Batiste said the Grenada Customs Division will utilize the portable analyzer to substantially reduce the amount of equipment required for testing the air quality and improving the effectiveness and speed of assessment.
These gas analyzers fall under the category of health and safety, and we are all aware how critical it is to be protected on the job. It was indeed a great gesture for the donation of same to the customer at this time as we endeavor to secure our officers daily. It's very important to us at this point in time because it helps minimize the risk to staff regarding health and safety. These analyzers detect hazardous gases and are vital to create a safe working environment for officers operating in confined spaces and whenever an examination of a container or containers is warranted.
That story just ended the national report for today, Monday, September 7th. Let's recap the top story. Ministry of Education starts new school year with Hour of Prayer. On behalf of the entire news and production team here at the Government Information Service, I am Rikisha St. Louis saying thank you for joining us. Until next time.